Did you know that behind the walls of silence and prayer in some convents, a story of pain and secrecy hides? A place where suffering wasn't just physical, but emotional too. A place where young women, often without a choice, saw their lives slip away in the dark hallways of an institution that was supposed to be about faith. This is one of those stories, one you'll never forget. Hi, my name is Ellen. I'm 85 years old, and I'm from Boise, Idaho. Today I'm going to share a story I've kept in my heart for a long time. But first, I ask a favor. If you haven't hit the like button yet, please do. Also subscribe so you don't miss stories like this one, full of pain but also triumph. And let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing where y'all are tuning in from. Now come with me and hear what I have to tell. I remember the day my life changed forever. I was young, just 18. Back then, my family believed the only proper path for a woman was the convent. It wasn't my choice, it was theirs. My mom and dad thought the religious life would give me everything I needed: respect, stability, and a place of honor. But nobody told me about everything I'd have to give up to follow that path. I entered that convent full of dreams and hopes, thinking it would be a place of peace where I could help people and find God. But I quickly realized it wasn't what I imagined. The convent was like a prison. The silence, the strict rules, and the nuns, some so harsh and cold. I saw girls like me forced to forget the lives they had before. Family, friends, everything. The convent turned us into shadows, voiceless, choiceless, just serving, praying, and living in silence. And the worst part, my friend, was that nobody could question anything. You couldn't talk about what you felt or ask why things were so hard. The nuns, some with stern glares, kept order with constant fear. Fear of anyone who dared speak up or show even a hint of weakness. I remember a younger sister who arrived one day, her eyes as lost as mine. She'd been sent there by her family, like me, without a choice. I watched her sink into loneliness, and I knew she was suffering. But I couldn't do anything because the fear of punishment was stronger than my desire to help. It was like pain in the convent was something we had to swallow quietly. It doesn't take long to realize that inside those walls, the biggest enemy isn't the work or the routine. The biggest enemy is the silence that chokes your soul. Each day I felt more lost. The convent, meant to be a place of prayer and peace, was really a maze of rules, fear, and loneliness. Me, who used to have a quiet life with my family, now only saw cold walls, grim-faced nuns, and the sound of prayers echoing through the halls like an empty drone. They said it was to bring me closer to God, but I felt farther from Him and myself. Every day, I spent my days in silence, trying to adjust to the cloistered life, but nobody prepared me for the emptiness I'd feel. Nobody told me about the pain of losing my identity. It was like I was slowly ceasing to be Ellen, becoming just a nameless nun with no story. And in that stifling silence, I saw the worst. As if endless prayers and daily chores weren't enough, I witnessed something nobody should have seen. A young sister, maybe my age when I arrived, was brought to the convent in the dead of night, her eyes full of fear. She was pale, sweating, and I knew something terrible had happened. She was never the same after that. Our convent, like many others, had its secrets. The authorities who were supposed to protect us turned a blind eye to what happened in the dark hallways. Nobody dared enter. It wasn't just the exhausting work or scarce food. It was the weight of unspoken rules, the silent fear surrounding us. We weren't allowed to question, to express pain or anguish. It was all drowned out by prayer, by endless hours of silence. I still wonder how we, young women full of life, were left to waste away behind those convent walls. And the worst part is, for a long time, I accepted it as my fate. The silence, the fear, it was all part of my new life. And in my youth, I thought there was no way out. Then one night, when the convent was completely silent, I heard something that changed everything. A sigh, a choked, desperate sigh coming from somewhere in the hallway. It wasn't just any sigh. It was someone crying for help, and I knew exactly what it meant. It was a cold night, colder than usual. The convent was silent as always, except for the creak of wood under the steps of sisters moving like ghosts through the halls. But that night, something was different. I was in my room, praying as we were told, when I heard the sigh. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but I knew it wasn't normal. At first, I thought it was my imagination, maybe the wind through the window cracks, but it wasn't. I knew it was a cry for help. But who in that convent would dare ask for help in the middle of the night, when nobody was willing to listen? I was used to living in fear, but I didn't know what to do. My conscience told me to ignore it, to stick to my routine and forget it, but a deeper part of me couldn't. I got up, heart pounding. I knew if I was caught outside my room, the consequences would be severe, but I couldn't resist. I followed the sound down the hallway, step by step. The closer I got, the clearer the sigh became. It was someone desperate, someone breaking the rules, just like me. I reached the door where the sound was coming from. I didn't know what I'd do, or what I expected to find. I took a deep breath and pressed my ear to the door. Then I heard it, a soft but unmistakable sob. It was a sister, one of the newest, alone in the shadows. Her face was hidden in her hands, her shoulders trembling. I recognized her. But in that moment of anguish, she wasn't just a fellow sister. She was someone breaking, losing herself, just like I'd felt for so long. That's when it hit me. We weren't just women seeking peace. We were prisoners, prisoners in a web of silence and fear where any act of rebellion, any question, was instantly silenced. Those who dared cry or ask for help were seen as weak, or worse, punished. I wanted to do something for her. What could I do? I was as lost as she was. I didn't have the courage to step in. My own pain, my own fear, was consuming me. I knew if I was caught, life there might become even more unbearable. Her pain, that deep pain, was being ignored by the same people who called us to prayer. In that moment, I made a decision. I didn't know if it was right, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. If not for me, then for her. Something had to change, but doing anything could cost me my freedom, my peace, even my soul. I went back to my room that night, but my mind wouldn't rest. Her sigh, her choked sob, the fear in her eyes, it haunted me. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of that pain, of something happening there that everyone was ignoring, pretending didn't exist. I knew if I stayed, the convent would swallow me whole. Turn me into one of the sisters who'd already accepted a life of silent suffering. But I couldn't let that happen. I had to do something. But what? The fear of being caught, of being punished, followed my every step in those walls. Every move, every thought felt watched. That's when I realized, if anyone was going to act, it had to be me. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, that nothing was happening. I wanted to scream, to run, to beg for help, but nobody understood that in that convent, the greatest enemy was the silence, and that silence, my friend, was killing us little by little. That night, what I saw in that hallway wasn't just a young woman crying. No, I saw the reflection of what I was becoming. I saw that if I didn't act, I'd be lost there, like so many others. That's when I decided I couldn't stand by anymore. In the dead of night, without making a sound, I got up. It wasn't just my freedom at stake. It was my soul. I knew something had to be done. With quiet steps, I headed to the dining hall where the keys to the rooms were kept. I knew if I took those keys, I could free her. I could at least. But who could guarantee I wouldn't be caught? Who could guarantee the convent wouldn't punish me ruthlessly, as they always did with those who rebelled? But that night, fear didn't speak louder. I went to the dining hall, grabbed the keys, and headed to her room. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought the whole convent could hear it. Every step felt like a massive risk, but I couldn't stop myself. When I reached her door, I looked through the crack and saw her still lying there, calmer now. I knew that even if I couldn't change everything, I could give her a sliver of hope, something she no longer believed existed. And that night, I made the most important decision of my life. I wouldn't accept the silence anymore. With the keys in my hand, I opened her door, and the steps I took after that changed everything. That night, I wasn't alone. And I wasn't just fighting for my freedom. I was fighting for hers, for ours. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't keep living with the feeling of drowning inside those walls. The fear of being caught, of being punished, nearly paralyzed me. But something inside me was stronger. The pain, the loneliness, the desperation of those trapped like me. That gave me strength. I had to act, I had to try. I knew if I stayed one more day in that convent, I'd lose myself. And I couldn't let that happen. The steps I took, the fear I felt as I acted. I knew that by taking those keys, I was seizing my freedom. The convent had already taken so much, but I wasn't going to let it take my courage, my ability to act. I didn't want to be another one who just accepted the pain without question. I went to the dining hall, heart racing, trying to control the panic. Every door I passed felt like another barrier. Every second more precious, like I was racing against time. The sound of my own footsteps seemed to echo through the convent, but I kept going, unwavering, until I reached the place where the keys were kept. I grabbed them with trembling hands, trying to make as little noise as possible. A strange feeling washed over me. I knew if I was caught, my life there would never be the same. But I also knew if I did nothing, my soul would die. With the keys in hand, I headed to her room. Each hallway seemed darker than the last, and the convent's silence became deafening. Fear was in every corner, but so was the drive to keep going, to not turn back. When I reached her door, I saw the sliver of light escaping from underneath. Her sigh still echoed in my mind, and I knew she was there, alone, lost in a world where no one could help her. But I was there now. I knew she needed someone, something, and maybe I was the only one who could do something for her. When I turned the key in the lock, the sound was almost deafening. I froze for a moment, fear nearly paralyzing me. But the feeling that this was our only chance pushed me forward. The door opened slowly, and there she was, alone, lying with empty eyes. She looked like she no longer believed she could escape those walls. But when she saw me, something sparked in her gaze, a flicker of hope, something she thought she'd lost. I knew I couldn't work miracles, but I could give her one thing she didn't expect, the possibility of choice. I approached her slowly, without a word. What could I say? How could I explain I was there to help when I didn't even know what would happen? But in that moment, words weren't needed. I wasn't there to promise anything. I was there to show her there was still a way out, that she could still fight, and most importantly, that she wasn't alone. We looked at each other for a long time, but we didn't need to say anything. She knew what I was doing, and I knew she understood. It wasn't just an escape. It was a chance to reclaim what had been taken from us, our dignity, our voice, our freedom. We left the room with the keys in hand, and in that moment, the convent seemed smaller, less threatening, as if the walls that once imprisoned us were starting to crack. But I knew it was a temporary escape. What would come next? What would happen when the convent realized someone dared break the rules? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. Things wouldn't be the same. And though fear followed me, I also felt a different strength inside me, one I'd never felt before. I just wanted her to know she wasn't alone and that, no matter how hard the convent tried to break us, we could still fight. Even in the darkest nights, we could find a light, a way out. With the keys still in my hands, the fear that once dominated the convent began to fade, but a new feeling crept in. Fear of the unknown, of what was to come. That simple act of opening her door, of giving her that chance, was about to change everything. The convent wouldn't stand idly by. I knew they'd find out, and what came next would be my reckoning. There was no doubt, but I didn't dwell on it. If I'd stopped to think, fear would have consumed me, and I wouldn't have had the courage to keep going. There was no turning back. Now, a life was at stake. Hers, mine, ours. We went out the back door, a path I knew well. It was risky, of course. Any moment a nun could appear, a sound could betray our escape. But there was no choice. We were past the point of no return. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, all that mattered was getting out of there. Out of that place that trapped us in ways I couldn't fully understand. I looked at her, trying to stay calm. She was so quiet, so scared. I could see the fear in her eyes, but there was something else too. A small spark of hope, something she'd lost long ago. She wasn't alone anymore, and that, as simple as it seemed, was the greatest comfort I could offer. We walked in the darkness, our footsteps muffled by fear. Each hallway felt longer, darker, as if the convent was trying to swallow us. But as we moved forward, the air felt fresher. I knew we were closer to freedom, but I didn't know the price we'd pay. Then, in the middle of our path, we heard something. A distant but unmistakable sound. The footsteps of other nuns coming our way. My heart nearly stopped. There was no time. I looked at the sister, and for a moment, I thought about running, hiding, but something told me we couldn't. There was no going back. I decided to face them. We ran to a small closet at the end of the hallway and hid in absolute silence, trying not to make a sound. Fear made me tremble, but I didn't let it stop us. I looked at the sister and saw she was scared too, but her eyes held a different flame, one I recognized in myself when I decided to fight. The footsteps grew closer. We could hear the sound of their sandals dragging on the floor. They were passing through the hallway, but they didn't know we were there, hidden, breathing the stale air in that tiny space. I could hear my own breathing, the rapid beating of my heart, as if time had slowed. For a moment, all I wanted was to disappear, but I knew I couldn't. If we were caught, the consequences would be severe. The footsteps stopped right by our door. My body was in shock, but somehow I kept control. I looked at the sister beside me, and she gave a small nod, as if saying, "We'll get through this." It was a brief exchange of glances, but I knew exactly what it meant. Seconds felt like hours. The silence grew heavy, as if the convent was waiting for our next move. But then, the footsteps moved away. They didn't stop to investigate. They just kept going. The relief was so overwhelming I nearly collapsed. But I knew we couldn't celebrate. The danger was far from over. We got up quickly and left the closet. Still holding the keys, we headed for the exit. The cool night air was already reaching us, but I knew we couldn't relax yet. Freedom was in sight, but I had a feeling something bigger, something worse, was about to happen. When we finally made it to the garden, the feeling of being outside those walls was indescribable. We were free, but for how long? I looked at the sister I'd helped escape and saw gratitude in her eyes, but also fear. Fear of being caught, of paying for our actions. And as I looked at her, I realized the freedom I so desperately wanted wasn't as simple as leaving. It was just the first part of our fight. Then, I looked at the horizon and made a silent promise to myself. No matter what happened, I wouldn't go back. I couldn't. As we left the convent, the sense of freedom was tangible, but something inside me said the real fight was just beginning. I looked at the sister beside me and knew our journey had only just started. The convent was still behind us, and the doubt of whether they'd find us never left me. The fear wasn't just of punishment anymore. It was the fear that the convent would never truly let us go. We moved through the garden, the cold night wind hitting our faces, as if the outside world was entirely different from the one we knew. For a moment, everything felt so strange, but the sound of our rapid breathing and muffled footsteps wouldn't let me forget. We were fleeing our own lives, what was expected of us, and above all, the silent pain the convent imposed on us. When we reached the street, I looked back. The convent was distant, but it felt like its shadow still stretched over us, watching, waiting for the moment to catch us. Every move seemed noticed, every step a risk. I knew we weren't just escaping the convent. We were escaping the very idea of being controlled, of being forgotten. I didn't know how far we'd get, but the sister was with me. Her strength was contagious, even with fear etched on her face. She was ready to keep going, as if she had nothing left to lose. And in that moment, I felt I had nothing left to lose either. What more could happen? We'd already broken every rule, crossed every line. Now there was only one path forward, but as we turned a corner, a shout cut through the night silence. It was distant but unmistakable. The sound of rapid footsteps, desperate voices. The convent had found us. The worst was unfolding before our eyes. We weren't just two women on the run anymore. We were being hunted, The feeling of being chased is indescribable. Fear becomes a tangible thing that grabs you and won't let you breathe. The sound of voices closing in seemed to swallow us. I knew we had to run, but what could we outrun besides our fear? The empty streets weren't enough to hide our escape. I looked at her and saw fear dominating her eyes, but neither of us stopped. We couldn't. With every turn, the voices grew louder, the footsteps closer. We could hear the nuns shouting, calling our names. The convent wouldn't let us go. I didn't know how long we could hold out, but one thing was certain. The convent's walls were far behind. But the hunt was just beginning. When we entered a small dead-end alley, the sound of voices closed in terrifyingly. There was nowhere left to run. I knew the nuns were surrounding us, and we didn't know what to expect. What would they do? Drag us back to the convent and punish us cruelly, or show mercy? I had no answers, only one certainty. We weren't going back. Then, in the chaos, a man appeared. He emerged from a side door like a shadow in the night. He looked at us, his gaze saying more than words could. A stranger who, in the midst of chaos, was our only chance to escape. He approached quickly, and before I could say anything, whispered, "Come, follow me. I can help." It was a chance, a way out of that dead-end alley. For a moment, distrust almost stopped me. Who was this man, and why was he willing to help? But the danger was greater than any doubt. I looked at the sister beside me, and she looked back, wordless, only fear in her eyes. We knew we had no choice. We followed the man through the dark streets without looking back. He led us quickly, and I knew at any moment our luck could change. The convent was close. Any second they could appear, and our escape could end. But something inside me, a strength I didn't know I had, told me to keep going, to trust the unknown, because in that moment, doubt was the greatest enemy. And I knew, if we hesitated, our freedom would slip through our fingers. The man guided us through the empty streets as if he knew exactly where he was going. He didn't say a word, but his hand gestures urged us to hurry. Inside, I was panicking, trying to understand what was happening. Who was he? Why had he appeared just as we were about to be caught? But there was something in his demeanor, his actions, that told me to trust him. I didn't know why, but deep in my heart, I felt that if I didn't follow him, the consequences would be worse. We passed through narrow alleys, high walls, and empty streets. The city seemed deserted, but I knew we weren't alone. The convent was still behind us, and somehow, the sound of the nuns' footsteps still echoed in my mind. They were so close, so close. The man led us to a small warehouse. The doors were locked, but he opened them quickly and pushed us inside. It was dark, and the smell of aged wood sent a chill down my spine. But I couldn't question it. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening. "Stay quiet," he whispered, closing the door behind us with a soft thud. "They're coming, but not here. You're safe for now." I looked at the sister and saw the same fear I felt. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were full of questions. I had so many questions, but nothing made sense. He'd helped us, but who was he? What did he want in return? What else did he know about the convent? His words stuck in my mind. "They're coming." Who? Who was after us now? The convent or something even more sinister? I didn't want to ask, didn't want to show I was scared, but my heart was racing, and my mind was a whirlwind. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" I finally asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, and for a moment it felt like he was analyzing my every move, as if he knew I was on the verge of a decision. One move, one step, and everything would change. "I don't have time for explanations," he said with a chilling calm. "The convent is just the beginning. It's not just there that your story ends. They have a lot of power. Power that goes beyond the convent's walls." He glanced out the window, as if watching for something. "But you too can change that. You can make a difference." A chill ran through me at his words. How did he know what I was thinking? What did he mean? What did he want from us? Before I could ask more, he raised his hand for silence. The sister grew even paler, her fear growing. But like me, she had no answers. He looked at us with urgency. "I'm helping you, but you need to follow my instructions. You can't hesitate. And if you want to get out of this alive, you'll have to trust me." I looked at the sister, fear etched on her face. She wanted to run, maybe even go back to the convent, to surrender to what was right. What the convent said was right. But I couldn't go back. Not after everything we'd been through. Not after knowing what that place did to our souls. "I trust you," I said, unsure if I meant the man or my own courage. The sister just nodded, silent. She knew what I knew. Our only chance now was to keep going, even without knowing what to expect. The man led us to a dark corner of the warehouse. He pulled a rope hanging from the wall, and a trap door in the ceiling opened slowly. Dust fell like a curtain, revealing a wooden ladder leading upstairs. "Climb," he said with a firmness that left no room for questions. "No one will find you here, but remember, the convent won't rest until they do. And when that happens, you'll need to be stronger than ever." As we climbed, the sister's gaze was still lost, as if trying to process what had just happened. I felt the same, but something inside me said that if we didn't do this now, our chances of surviving would be even slimmer. When we reached the top, the man closed the trapdoor. The darkness above was total, but he lit a candle, revealing a small space that looked like a storage room. It was a makeshift hideout, nothing fancy, but we were safe for now. "You're safe here for now," he said, looking out the window with a distant gaze, as if waiting for something yet to come. "But don't stay long. Your time is running out." I didn't understand. What did he mean? What was happening? What else was there besides the convent? And why was he helping us? But no matter how many questions I had, I knew there was no time. The convent was on our trail, and the only certainty I had was that if we didn't act fast, everything we'd done would be for nothing. The man didn't say another word after leading us to the hideout. He stood there motionless, watching the city through the window. The silence between us was heavy, almost deafening. I could feel the weight of his words echoing in my mind. "The convent won't rest until they find you, and when that happens, you'll need to be stronger than ever." I knew he was right, but I didn't know what to do with that truth. How far should I trust him? And what did it mean to be stronger than ever? My mind was racing, but I couldn't find answers. All I knew was that the convent was after us, and no matter how we hid, the hunt had begun. The sister was sitting in a corner, her eyes glassy, as if trying to make sense of everything. I knew what she was thinking. The fear, the uncertainty, the feeling of being out of control. But we couldn't turn back now. I approached her, mustering courage. "We need to stay calm. We don't have any other options." She looked at me, and something in her eyes changed. She nodded, but the fear was still there. I turned to the man. He was standing, still watching the window, but something in his posture told me he was alert, that he knew time was running out. I didn't know what he knew, but something told me he had more answers than he was sharing. I approached him, but before I could ask anything, he turned slowly and said, "The convent isn't your only problem. They have eyes everywhere, people you'd never imagine working for them. And when they find out you've escaped, they'll use every method to track you down." A wave of dread grew inside me. What did he mean? Everywhere. I knew the convent was relentless, but the idea that there was no one we could trust made me want to scream. Instead, I swallowed my fear and asked, "Who are these people? What are you telling us?" He looked at me with an enigmatic gaze, as if weighing whether to tell us the truth, but then, as if deciding, he spoke softly. "It's not just about escaping the convent. The convent is only part of the story. They're part of something much bigger, something beyond faith, beyond the stone walls and silence, you know. What you stumbled upon was more than they could allow, and now that they know someone's trying to defy them, they won't stop until they destroy you." I was speechless. He was saying that all the suffering, all the horrible things we'd been through, weren't just about a convent. There was something bigger, more dangerous behind it. I felt the weight of his words crushing my chest, my mind unable to process it all at once. "But what is it? What do they want from us?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at us again, his expression that of someone who knew more than he was willing to share, then sighed and replied, "The convent, the nuns, everyone you know there, they're just pawns. They handle the visible, divine side of what happens, but behind it is something far darker, a secret organization, a closed circle of powerful people manipulating the convent's decisions and many other places. They're not just worried about escapes. They're worried about what you saw, what you discovered, and above all, what you know without realizing. His words hit like a weight in my chest. I couldn't fully grasp what he was saying. What did what you know without realizing mean? I looked at the sister, and she was as lost as I was, but she was starting to realize, like me, that there was no going back. Whatever it was bigger than both of us. They're after anything that threatens their control, he said, breaking the silence. And you're a threat, but if you want to survive, you'll need to act fast. You can't trust anyone but yourselves. I was almost too overwhelmed to process it all, but something inside me, the same impulse that made me act, pushed me to decide. How can we defeat them? I asked, feeling the battle had already begun. And it wasn't just about escaping anymore. It was about fighting, uncovering the truth. He smiled, a grim, enigmatic smile, as if he knew we weren't ready for the answer, but said anyway, I'm not saying it'll be easy, and I'm not saying it'll be without sacrifices, but if you want the truth, you'll have to dive deeper into the game. Escaping isn't enough. You need to find the center, the point where it all begins, and that'll lead you straight to their heart. I felt the weight of his words. Their heart. That's where you'll find the answers to everything. But to get there, you'll have to cross boundaries you never imagined existed. You'll need to be ready for anything. I knew there was no way out. The man had given us a choice. Either move forward, defying the convent's power and this secret organization, or keep running and be hunted forever. What he offered wasn't freedom. It was a fight for the truth. And as much as fear gripped me, I knew there was nothing else to do. We had to keep going. We're with you, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But I wasn't sure if we were truly ready for what came next. Whatever it was, our fight was just beginning. His words about their heart still echoed in my mind like a stifled scream. I knew we couldn't go back. Not after what he'd said, but part of me, the part still scared, wanted to turn and run. Whatever it was, the unknown, the shadows, whatever awaited us, felt like something I'd never be able to face. But the part of me that survived the convent knew there was no choice. It was now or never. The man looked at us with intense, unwavering eyes, as if waiting for our decision. He didn't seem nervous or uncertain. He knew what he wanted, what he was doing. But doubt still consumed me. Why are you helping us? I asked again, my voice shaky. What's your stake in this? He took a deep breath, seeming to weigh his words. I'm not doing this for personal gain, Ellen. I'm doing it because I know what it's like to be hunted, to have your life controlled by something bigger than you. He paused, then added, I was one of you years ago. I was trapped by the same system, but I escaped. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. Escaped? How? I couldn't understand. He'd been a victim, too. How could someone who'd lived through that be so calm now? What did he know that I didn't? He smiled, a sad, weary smile. You don't understand yet, Ellen. But you will when the time comes. What's happening to you two is just the beginning. If you manage to escape the convent, that's a victory. But the hardest part is still ahead. And please, don't think the convent is your biggest enemy. What they represent is just one piece of the puzzle. And what lies beyond that? What are they doing to us? The sister asked, now calmer but with a shadow of doubt in her eyes. He looked at her, and for a moment it seemed he wanted to tell everything, but something held him back. What you saw in that convent, the secrets, the practices, that's just the tip of the iceberg. What they do, the nuns, is what they call purification. But it's not religious purification. It's something else. Mind control, manipulation that goes beyond faith, beyond morality. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on our expressions. What they do is prepare people like you for something far darker than you can imagine. Something that's not just in Boise, but spreads across the world. His words hung in the air. I felt a tightness in my chest, like I was losing my breath. Prepare for what? I whispered, unsure if I wanted the answer. He stepped closer, more resolute now, his gaze intense. I'll be straight with you. The nuns in the convent, those women you call religious, a part of a global control system. They're not just a religious order. They're pawns, as I said, in a bigger game. They're controlled by a secret society that manipulates faith and uses people like you, vulnerable women who've lost everything, for their own ends. They create soldiers, servants, without you even realizing, with powers that... I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could he be so certain? But the desperation and pain in his eyes told me he wasn't lying. The sister was silent, processing it all, and for a moment I felt completely lost. But how can we fight something that big? I asked, my voice filled with despair. He looked toward the back of the room, as if preparing to reveal something even graver. The path to defeating this won't be easy, but there's a secret, something hidden in the convent, at the heart of what they call purification. That's where you'll find the key to dismantling everything. It's not just about escaping. It's about destroying the system from within, the control they impose on people. But to do that, you'll need to go back, undercover. I stared at him, incredulous. Undercover? Back to the convent? The idea seemed insane, almost suicidal. He nodded without hesitation. Yes, exactly. I know it sounds crazy, but it's the only way to stop what they're doing. If you go back carefully, patiently, and get to the root of their practices, you'll uncover what's needed to end this cycle of pain and control, to destroy what's behind it all. The sister took a step back, as if recoiling from the thought. That's impossible. They'll catch us again, Ellen. They'll kill us. We can't go back. I know it's hard, I said, trying to calm her. But in that moment, I knew there was no other choice. It's dangerous, but it might be the only way to stop this for good. I turned to the man, who watched with the look of someone who'd already known loss and struggle. And you? What will you do? Will you help us? Will you join this fight? He gave a sad, almost bitter smile. I've already done my part. Now the fight is yours. He turned toward the door, and before leaving, looked at us one last time. I just hope you're ready. What you'll face isn't just a convent. It's the heart of something far darker, and when you go in, there's no turning back. I stood there, a heavy weight in my chest. The man had given us a direction, but also plunged us into an abyss of uncertainty. Going back to the convent seemed like madness, but the idea of running forever without answers was unbearable too. How could we escape something already inside us, in the heart of what we'd lived? He was right. We needed to understand what was happening, what they were really doing. The sister, though, seemed more shaken. The idea of returning to the convent felt unbearable to her. I could see in her trembling hands that the pain was still alive inside her. I felt it too, but somehow, my anger and desperation were turning into something stronger, a fierce will to fight, to understand. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be safe, but it was the only path to free ourselves from what that place and those women represented. How can we trust this will work? What if it doesn't? The sister asked, her voice breaking. I had no answer for her. I didn't know if it would work. All I knew was that if we didn't try, we'd never have the chance to uncover the truth. We have to try, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I didn't know what would happen when we went back, how we'd infiltrate, but I knew if we didn't try now, we'd always be running, hiding, never understanding what we were truly facing. The man seemed to hear our words but didn't move. He'd given what he could, and he knew the decision was ours. One last thing, he interrupted. Believe me, it won't be easy. You'll need to be smarter than ever. In the convent, nothing is what it seems. The nuns aren't just religious. They know more than you think. The control system goes beyond anything you can grasp now. I know, I said, more to myself. I knew he was telling the truth, but part of me refused to believe all our suffering had been for nothing, that those nuns were pawns in something far bigger. I just wanted answers, for the nightmare to end. The sister was silent, watching the man. Something in how he spoke with such certainty made even her feel more resolved, as if she had a mission. I knew she was scared, but no matter how she tried to hide it, she couldn't deny that part of her wanted the truth too. Then we'll do it. We'll go back, I said, looking at the man. But how do we get in? How do we infiltrate without being noticed? He approached a table in the corner and pulled out a stack of old yellowed papers from a drawer. He spread them before us. "Here's what you need to know. A map of the convent with key points marked. The structure has several areas you don't know. Secret passages, locked chambers, areas off limits to regular nuns. But you'll need to enter without drawing attention. The older nuns, the ones closest to the Mother Superior, are the most dangerous. They know what you are, what happens to those who try to escape." I looked at the map. The streets we knew, the gardens, the exits. But inside the convent was a labyrinth of passages and chambers I'd never seen. How had they hidden all this from us? How had we never noticed something far darker was happening? The sister leaned over the map, and for a moment we both stood there, absorbed in what we saw. "So, we need to find the secrets. And when? How?" she asked, clearly nervous, and I understood. I didn't know what to expect either. The fear was real, but the feeling that the truth was right there gave me courage. The man stepped back, as if he'd said all he needed to. "I don't know what you'll find in there, but if you want to destroy them, you'll need to reach the room where it all begins. The room where the Mother Superior and the convent's leaders perform their purifications. That room holds everything you need to know, but it's where the danger is greatest. When you go there, you'll need to be ready for the worst." I knew he wasn't exaggerating. We'd already seen the brutality of that place, but this, what he was suggesting, what lay behind those purifications, seemed even more sinister. I tried not to think about what it could mean, but fear grew inside me. "But how do we get close without being caught? We can't just walk in, can we?" "No, of course not," he replied, turning to us with a serious expression. "You'll need to blend in with the novices. Every move you make, every word you say, could save or doom you. When you reach the heart of the convent, there's no turning back. There can be no doubt." His words hung in the air, and I knew he was right. What awaited us in the convent wasn't just a mission. It was a battle, a constant fight for survival. And after everything we'd been through, nothing would be harder than what we were about to face. "We're ready," I said, trying to convince myself, trying to convince the sister. "If we don't try, we'll never know. We'll find out what they're doing and end this once and for all." The sister didn't speak for a long time, but I saw resolve in her eyes, the same resolve growing in me. She knew, like I did, there was no choice. Either we faced this monster head on, or we'd keep running, fear consuming us. It was time to fight. Night fell quickly, and in the silence of the house where we were hiding, the man's words still echoed in my mind. The plan was clear, but the fear of failing, of being caught, seemed to crush every step we took toward the convent. The sister and I looked at each other one last time, wordless, as if we knew there was no turning back. We couldn't hesitate now. Fate was leading us to that dark place where our true fight began. When we reached the convent, everything seemed the same as before. The cold, unyielding walls, the familiar smell of candles and incense. But there was something we, now more aware, felt in the air. The place no longer seemed a refuge, but a prison, a trap that had swallowed us for so long. The weight of the mission pressed on our shoulders. We infiltrated. We started doing what the map taught us, moving in the shadows, paying attention to details, listening to what wasn't said. We blended with the novices. In that game, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but we knew something bigger was waiting. I started wondering if it was all an illusion, but then, one night during a vigil in the chapel, everything was revealed. That's when we found the entrance to what the man called the room where it all begins, a hidden door behind an old altar, covered by heavy tapestries and dust. What lay beyond that door, neither the sister nor I could imagine. The heart of the convent. When the door opened, the room was darker than I'd ever imagined, but the man's words echoed in my mind. "You'll need to be ready for the worst." Each step felt like it pulled us deeper into the abyss. The smell was thick, heavy, and then we saw strange symbols on the walls, inscriptions I didn't recognize, but that felt sinister. Those nuns, those women of faith, were part of something far bigger. It wasn't just about faith or purity. It was something that controlled bodies, even lives. They were using people, manipulating the most vulnerable to turn young women into true puppets, all in the name of a power I didn't yet fully understand. I looked at the sister. She was pale, almost breathless, but something in her eyes shone. It wasn't fear. It was anger, a silent anger spreading through us. Whatever it was, we'd reached the center of what was happening. We finally understood, and that only deepened the horror. But then, a voice cut through the room's silence. "I knew you'd come here," said a nun, the oldest of all, with a cold smile, the Mother Superior. She stood in the dim light, watching us as if she'd known our every move. "Did you really think you could escape? That you could expose what you don't understand?" She stepped forward, revealing a mask of power we could hardly believe. "You're part of something far bigger than you imagine. It's not just about control. It's about purity, true purification of the soul, eliminating any shadow that threatens our order." Her words made no sense. Purification? What did she mean? But before we could react, other nuns appeared, filling the room. It was an ambush, a trap. They'd been waiting for us. The sister and I braced to fight, but fear and uncertainty were taking hold. We were alone, surrounded by women who seemed more than nuns, shadows controlled by a greater, unstoppable power. It felt like the end. But before we could be captured, the Mother Superior raised her hand, stopping them all. "I knew you wouldn't understand, but it was necessary. For a long time, the convent has been the stronghold of our purification. But what you don't know, Ellen, is that control was never just about the body. It was about the mind. This order, these nuns, we're part of something bigger than the convent, something that cannot be destroyed by the rebellion of two lost souls." "And what is that? What do you want?" I asked, more defiant than scared, challenging her. I knew our fight wasn't just to survive. It was to end this once and for all. "What do we want?" the Mother Superior repeated, chuckling softly. "What we want, my child, is ascension, absolute control over all, complete purification. And you're just pawns in this game. Do you think you can destroy us? End our order? You don't know what you're doing." That's when I realized her words weren't a threat, but a declaration of victory. The convent, the system, the control. It wasn't just a religious structure. It was a machine, a global network that fed on pain, fear, and manipulation, not faith. And we were just its latest victims. But before things could worsen, as the nuns closed in, something shifted. A door to our left opened, and the mysterious man who'd helped us appeared. With him came other men, seemingly from the outside, but they looked like allies. It was a covert operation, something I'd never imagined existed. They were infiltrated in the system, here to rescue us, to help us destroy the network for good. In an instant, the room erupted into chaos. As they fought the nuns, the sister and I tried to flee. We knew the confrontation was inevitable, but it wasn't our fight. The truth was out, and with those men's help, we escaped the convent, finally. We didn't know what would happen next, but we knew we'd taken a crucial step. The organization manipulating the convent was still out there, but we were no longer victims. Now, we were fighters, and if we have to go back, it'll be to destroy it, once and for all. Well, folks, that's my story. The story of a young woman whose freedom was taken but who never stopped fighting. A story of pain, but also strength, courage, and discovery. I went through tough times, but if there's one thing I learned, it's to never lose hope. Even in the darkest hours, there's always a light waiting to guide us. If you made it this far, you must have been touched by what I went through. I hope this story inspired you. I know life can put us in situations that seem impossible to overcome, but like me and my sister, you have the strength inside to change your story. I'd love to hear what you thought of this story. It's not easy to open my heart and share such personal moments, but if this moved you, if it did something for you, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might be inspired too. Oh, and tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing where folks are hearing these stories. It makes me feel connected to y'all. That's it for now. Until next time. And remember, never lose your strength.